presenter and panel up at the same time.
Yes, I can.
So, Mohammed, we have a motion and a second. If you would go down the list of the commissioners and ask them how they vote on that. We've got a motion for Ms. Boswell to be the chair, and in the event that she loses signal for whatever reason, Mr. Fuertes will be the alternate in that capacity.
I was going to say this may be a good opportunity to utilize the hand raise.
Yeah, we see 3 hands raised. We're looking to see
6 of us.
Right, I see 6-0.
Okay, so Mohammed, what I would suggest is after everybody gets their votes in, after they raise their hands, if you would just count those votes and say something along the lines of motion carries 6-0, and then we know we can move on. In the event that we do not see all people raising their hands, you can ask them or remind them to raise their hands, or ask everybody to lower their hands and ask if anybody is opposed to whatever the issue is. And then we'll count the hands that time, and then we have an idea of what the vote is.
That sounds good to me.
So I think at this point, everybody could lower their hands, and then Ms. Boswell, we will unmute your microphone so that you can call the meeting to order and proceed. Thank you kindly.
Thank you. I'm trying to pull up the information. All I'm seeing are the participants, not any information. I can exit out and use the information I have, but I'm not seeing anything aside from the participants.
Martin, do you have a share screen with the agenda on it?
As soon as I get the screen shifted over to me, I will get that portion started and we can begin the meeting.
While you do that, it looks like Mr. Fuertes has his hand up. So if somebody can unmute him, that would be beneficial. Oh, or maybe not. He took his hand down.
Sorry. My bad.
Okay, I should have the PowerPoint up and ready for you.
Okay. Good evening. The time is now 6:48 p.m. and we are calling the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order for May 4th, 2020. Just see the first page. I'll just go to my stuff. Okay, so for new business is the consideration and possible action the 5-year capital improvement program for 2021 through 2025.
Are you ready? Okay. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Robert Upton. I'm the Director of Engineering and Capital Projects. I know there are about 4 of you that I have not met personally, but my staff has with you and has met with you regarding normal planning and zoning items during the course of the time that you've been serving. This time right now is our time of the year that we, as the capital project side that I oversee, has now started to put together the capital program for the next 5 years, which would be fiscal year 2021 through fiscal year 2025. We come and visit you every year as per the city charter. And in that city charter, we come to you and present just our list of projects that staff and each of the departments that represent those end user projects, from parks to fire department, planning and for parks, fire department, police department, public works. We all meet together to visit and look and review our projects for the next 5 years, add to, reprioritize, and then set forth that list of projects with funding capabilities. Those projects are then vetted through city management, and the next step in that process per the city charter states that we need to present these findings and list of projects that we've developed over the past 4 to 5 months to be able to get your recommendation of approval to present to the city manager. From there, that recommendation is just part of the file, and the list of projects are then presented and given to city council during the time of budget. So we've taken that time the past 4 months and developed the list of projects that you have. It's in the attachment, which is 38 pages long. We will go through the first cover pages that were in your package, but right now I'm going through just a brief synopsis of the memo. Just for edification on that, the capital improvement program is planned out for 5 years at a time. However, only year 1 is what is presented and approved by council in the budget year. Years 2 through 4 are recommendations that are part of the budget, but are only planned for and then may change when that subsequent year, when that year comes up to be budgeted and actually be part of that fiscal year's budget. So we incorporate all things associated with our CIP, from drainage to streets to parks to water and wastewater infrastructure. We then budget those and take a look at those. We incorporate funding obligations that we have from the Texas Water Development Board, TxDOT, any grants we may have through HGAC or the Houston-Galveston Area Council, any funding other partnerships that we have. All those are put in and then associated and ranked. Just to let you know, as part of this year with the unique situation we have with the COVID-19 pandemic, but also a thing that we've also been planning for is to present council with our CIP plan in a workshop on June 27th. They'll be taking a look at that and taking a look at, of course, the funding associated with those projects and any changes that may come out of that workshop meeting, or also in this particular time, anything associated with the economy and any funding obligations with financing will also be discussed at that time. Our projects here are listed and broken into several categories with that, and you'll see those coming up where we will have discussions on timing, discussions on if there's any additional money needed due to market changes in the value of work, if the project budget was reduced due to scope changes, or a new project in totality. So you'll see that. So if we'll start with page number 3 in your packet, which is drainage. That's what's on your screen right now. You will see that the Willow Crest subdivision project that is moved and is in timing, meaning it moved up in 2021. That is part of our 2019 bond program. Yellow ones are projects that are new to the CIP. The Hickory Slough Regional Detention Pond is a 2019 bond program, so that was approved last year by the voters, so we then now have it in the CIP and when it's planned for. We also received some grant funding from the General Land Office of Texas for 3 projects. That'll be DR 2102 through 2104. Those 3 projects came in and we have a grant from the GLO to do those. And so those are new projects and that's why they're in yellow. You can switch to the next page and you'll see that those drainage projects, we move on to park projects. Drainage projects are what was there, but we go on to parks projects. These park projects have all been slated in the previous year's CIP, and now we're coming forward. You can see that these are in the bond program stage as well for park equipment recapitalization. And that's where they are. And so parks are right on schedule. Clear Creek Trail, just so you know for your information, is a 80-20 type funded project from TxDOT. We were able to get that through and get participation for them at an 80% their share, 20% city share. We can go to the next page for facilities. All these facilities, as you can tell, also stayed in there. The animal shelter, Sherry D. Coleman Animal Shelter, Adoption Center, that we moved up so we can try and take care of some good pricing that are out. And we also have a construction manager at risk on board to do that project so we can try and move that project forward. The remaining projects have been slated, and after we start getting into year 4 and year 5, that's where the yellow projects start coming in, where we start bringing projects that were in last year's capital improvement program as year 6 are now in 5. So you'll start seeing those projects starting to come forward. Go to the next page for streets. Streets is the same way. A lot of these projects have been already slated and prepared in the previous CIPs. The Makawa Road widening one and the Smith Ranch Road one both had some time changes associated with that due to TxDOT letting dates and making and fulfilling TxDOT requirements. They are a partner in those 2 projects, so we needed to make sure that we get the project done and completed. And so those have moved out just a little bit due to some land acquisition issues. And then, excuse me, moving forward, those are the rest that we have associated in new projects or changes really in projects across the way. Next page, we need to go 2 pages. You'll head over to the water CIP. This one has changed the most because in both the water and the wastewater capital improvement programs or the CIPs, we have broken what we called programmable programs, meaning that if we had a lift station program, we just had a certain amount of money for each year set aside. We have now taken those and broken them up, so we've identified specifically each sanitary sewer lift station, or in this case on the water side, each water pump station that needs to be addressed for each year, instead of just programming them out and thinking that they'll make it in each year. We have identified each item and a specific cost associated with that. So when you take a look here, we have projects. The first 3 are associated with timing of developers. We have partnered with the developers in the community to oversize. So this is just paying for our size to increase the water lines with regards to our water model. So we're only paying the change in size so we can then maximize and meet demand for the future in those areas. Our Bailey water plant needed to move out a little bit. We've done some changes in scope, so it pushed out just a little bit, and that change is reflected. The rest of these projects, as you can tell, are specific projects that have broken out. So for example, if you take a look at the Liberty elevated storage tank and the Liberty ground storage tank, those were just put under in the previous year's budgets as tank rehabilitation. Now we have started identifying exactly what tanks are going to be identified and rehabilitated each year. So those have been through. Along with that also has been broken out for our 2019 bond program associated with the streets. We've also associated water and wastewater work with those. So once we open the street up, we can go in and do the water and wastewater repairs or line replacements at the same time. So that way when we're done, the street is complete. So that's what the changes are that are opening up and what you see now. You want to head 2 pages over to wastewater, please? So in wastewater here, you'll see that we have two major wastewater treatment plants. These plants are old. They are up and slated for expansion. The John Hargrove Environmental Center is expanding due to service capacity and needs. So that's an expansion of that plant, excuse me. The Barry Rose wastewater reclamation facility, that plant has been around since the 60s. It's time and has reached the end of its useful life. And so that will build a new plant. But tying with that is that we've expanded that plant and we'll be looking to decommission the Longwood plant located on Dixie Farm Road and send that wastewater up to the Barry Rose plant and reduce our number of wastewater plant infrastructure in the coming years. We have some lift station rehab program, as I mentioned earlier. We've taken the program portion out of it and identified specifically the projects we want to work on every year for the next 5 years. So that's why we have a lot of new projects. We are actually looking at identifying them and costing them per project specifically. So that's what each of those are. And also tied in that, of course, as I said, on the water side and with the street reconstruction for the bond program, if we have any water or wastewater infrastructure that needs to be addressed during the street reconstruction, we go in and do that at the same time, so we're not coming back later. So that ends the summary, and these projects are ranked by year, as you can tell by the numbers, by our priority. So this is the 5-year list. And then in the subsequent pages thereafter, the remaining packages up to 38 pages are truly the project name, the description, and the justification of why we need each project. I will not go through each of those unless there are specific questions associated with that. But that concludes my presentation associated with the capital improvement program for the next 5 years. I'm looking forward to maybe any questions you might have, or if not, that would be great. But then heading towards your action to give just that recommendation, as we do every year, from the Planning and Zoning Commission to the city manager. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I have a couple of questions, if you can hear me.
I can hear you, sir.
This first one's more just an open comment. The trail system in the parks. I sure would like to see more parking. Anytime I speak to someone and they tell me they went for a walk or try to utilize the trail system, parking is just not there. They're telling me they have to park at Lowe's to jump on the trail and then go along Clear Creek. Just a comment, I hope in the future when we design or engineer those that there's plenty of parking. I know in Shadow Creek they had a parking lot on the one along Kingsley. I can recall that one, but I haven't seen the parking other than the recycle center has some parking. It's either there or next door, and you can jump on that walking trail. But I'd hate for all this money to be spent on the walking trail and then the access to it's difficult, so people don't utilize it. So that was just a comment, not a question. I'm assuming, and this is probably a yes or no for you, and I think I already know the answer, but there are some roadways in particular that I know of that are in progress. McHard, for example, from Macawa over to Cullen is, I believe you guys have already purchased all the land rights, and I see some utility work going on. That wasn't mentioned in this, and I'm assuming that's because it's already in progress and the funds have been let, and it's no longer a capital project. This is a today project. Is that correct?
Mr. Fuentes, yes, that is correct. What you have here is what will be appropriated in next year's budget. Those funds have already been appropriated. You will see that project when the final CIP for 2021 comes in, because the project is not complete, but the funding obligations have already been done. So that you are correct in your statement. To go back and answer your question on the parking real quick, we'll use the Green Tea Trail, that trail right there by Lowe's. We were limited by and restricted by how much land that the city actually had there in that. aspect, but most definitely I will take that in consideration as we continue to develop more trails and take a look to make sure we do address parking.
Fantastic. Then the one question I had, it was in the streets. I believe the number was TR, like Tom Robert, 1905. It referred to Shadow Creek Landscaping, and that was the only word I was able to write down fast enough.
I will be happy to explain that. So in the streets programs, we also have TERS. Remember when I talked about earlier, we have multiple funding obligations or ability to get funding. One is through the tax reinvestment zone, which is TERS 2 located in Shadow Creek Ranch area. So there's funding that's available through that they will issue the debt and reimburse the city when we get in line with the project being complete for those projects. So an example of that is Broadway Road from 288 to 521. That was a TERS funded project the city built. We are in line now to be able to get that funding and reimburse the city for putting that project in. This is the same with the Shadow Creek Parkway, landscaping and street lighting and sidewalks for that project. That project will be done to beautify and also make sidewalks connections all the way from 288 to Shadow Creek Ranch Park along 2234 or Shadow Creek Parkway. And that'll be funded by the city for a little while. And then when the TERS gets to that point in line, then the TERS will send us that money from their program. The other one associated with that is intersection improvements. And then there's another one in there on sidewalk reconstruction or new sidewalk, not reconstruction, new sidewalk projects that are connecting gaps and also adding sidewalk within the tax reinvestment zone.
Just as a follow-up, the way I understood the tax incremental reinvestment zone, the TERS that you spoke of, was that the developer or whoever it is pays for it, and the city, through tax collection, reimburses X amount of percent of the tax in that general TERS area to repay with interest the developer and or the entity responsible. So in fact, it's really those landowners there nearby that are paying for it, from a broad perspective. Is that correct? And if that's the case, is all of Shadow Creek and Southern Trails and such are paying for the one along Broadway from 288 to 521?
Correct. So anyone within the tax reinvestment zone number 2, and that is the Shadow Creek area, they then are gaining the benefit from that. Just like the developers who put in regional infrastructure are being reimbursed, so is the city. Now, the city doesn't collect the taxes, the tax reinvestment board does, and then they reimburse. So there's a whole process associated with that.
Right.
But yes, that is correct. So in terms of us being in there, we would start to act like a developer, and we're beautifying and taking care and filling in things. We do all the paperwork and follow all the rules, just like a developer does. And then we turn that in, and if we get it complete, then we get in the line. The sooner we can make sure our package is complete, the sooner we can get in line above everybody else who are still not having a complete package, then we can get our payment from them that much sooner.
Thank you. And I'm happy to take this conversation offline if I'm the only one interested in it. I'm more than happy to do so. My last follow-up would be the one along Shadow Creek Parkway, I think you mentioned, or was it Pearland Parkway? I thought you said Shadow Creek Parkway.
Pearland Parkway for the trails. That's the one there. We only have so much land. That's the only reason why the parking lot has about 6 spots, is that we were limited by how much land we had.
Sure. And is there any PERS monies going towards any improvements along McHard or Shadow Creek Parkway?
Not against McHard, because that's outside the TERS zone. So everything so it'd be anything west of 288. It's actually a business center in 288. Our business center, 2234 and west. That's just generic. I'm just saying generic, so I don't get the full idea. But that location, anything in Shadow Creek Ranch, is where that money has to be spent. It cannot go outside those boundaries.
Right.
Great.
My only my comment there was, I guess I would expect some of this. I know Shadow Creek Ranch collects Shadow Creek Ranch Commercial Maintenance Association fee. I hear all the commercial people complaining about it all the time. I wonder why some of the funds aren't used. Some of those funds wouldn't be utilized, and or even if when I read it first, I thought, if we're talking about landscaping, shouldn't the HOA of Shadow Creek, pay for some of the landscaping and such? But you're talking about beautifying the roadway itself.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. Sorry to take everybody's time. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Mr. Upton, this is Brandon Dansby. I had a quick question.
Yes, sir.
You doing okay, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Just,
Good.
Living the dream.
Yes, sir. Aren't we all? On the water portion of the CIP on page 13, WA 2103 is showing 518 utility relocations. First question I'd say, is that in regards to the expansion of 518 that's coming up?
Yes, sir. So that particular roadway, as you know, 518 is looking at moving and widening to 6 lanes total, 3 lanes in each direction. We have a major transmission or a major distribution line, 16-inch, that is on the edge of the current road. As required by TxDOT, we are required as I'll say a franchisee, just like everybody else in a TxDOT road right away, to move our utilities outside the right of way or just inside the right of way, outside the level of improvements. So this project is a result of being in there, and we are required and obligated to move our utilities out of the way.
Okay, I would just like to point out, if you look at page 28 of the CIP, which is page 32 of our package, the 28, the WA 2103 is not this project. That looks like they double dipped and put 2102 is the exact same as 2103. So it just looked like a.
Oh, great. Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that catch.
Yes, sir.
We spend a lot of time looking at these all the time, and sometimes we get a little tunnel vision. So I appreciate the fresh eyes.
No problem. Thank you, sir. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Can I ask you about the safe routes to school or safe route? I've lost it, but it was
Yes, ma'am.
I think it was under streets. I think it was under streets.
Yes, it is. Safe routes to school should be under streets.
And that one's, I looked in the explanations, and it says it was for a grant from 2015. Is that right?
Yes. So Safe Routes to Schools is an HGAC funded and TxDOT funded project. And so we had to go back in 2013 to apply, and then 2015 that funding was approved through the Transportation Improvement Projects, or the TIP portion of HGAC, and the fundings associated with that. We actually are starting design as per our advanced funding agreement with TxDOT this year, and we'll be letting that project out or bidding that project in about 18 months. One of the hiccups that that's Safe Routes to Schools. We have funds for construction, so as soon as we get through design, we will bid out construction. I'm sorry, I was thinking of our Clear Creek Trail. That's been another one that's funded, but yes, we'll be doing design shortly. We'll be taking our agreements, finalizing those, and then going out with 3 schools that will have those areas within a half mile, if I recall correctly, have any gaps that filled in for sidewalks, and then any pedestrian bridges that need to be put in.
It's not highlighted any color. It's just white. So that means it's going to happen in 2021. Is that what we can take it to mean?
Yes, that means there's been no changes to the project.
Right.
So usually the color coding means that there's a change to the project.
Right.
If any other commissioners have any other questions, could you please raise your hand so we can sure to call on you and unmute you? Otherwise, I think what we'll do is we'll be looking for a motion to approve the recommended changes in accordance with the fix of the issue talked about by Mr. Danz.
This is Commissioner Fuertes. I make a motion to approve.
This is Commissioner Dansby, second. I assume we're doing a vote by raise of hands. Is that correct?
Correct.
That is correct. And I have Mr. I have Ashley Boswell raising hand. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I thought I saw all 6 hands go up. If everybody could.
I actually want to ask a question before we voted.
Okay, that's a great idea. Thank you. I appreciate that. What if everybody else, unless they have a question?
I'm sorry, I took myself off of mute. Is the motion to approve or to approve with correction?
I would recommend approve with correction, but that is Mr. Upton speaking.
Mr. Fuertes, as you're the one who made the motion, if you could clarify.
I'd be happy to make that a motion to approve with corrections. Thank you.
Commissioner Dansby.
Do you need him to second again?
I'm sorry, must not have heard me. Yes, I second that motion.
Yeah. Thank you.
I see 6 votes. The motion approved unanimously.
Commissioners, thank you very much for your time tonight. I appreciate it. I'll be leaving the meeting though, Martin. I need to get over to the other one.
And thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
And Ms. Boswell, as you are chairing the meeting, I don't want to step on your toes in any way whatsoever. What I would recommend is after the discussion has done, after we've had the discussion, if anybody has any additional questions, and then if you don't see any hands raised, then if you would ask for everybody to vote by showing your hands if they're voting for the issue. And then after that, if we don't have all 6 hands, if you would ask for people who are opposed, ask everybody to lower their hands, and then ask if anybody's opposed to raise their hands. And then we could be sure, Martin can be sure to, I'm sorry, Mohammed is the one who's doing it. Mohammed would be able to ask everybody, or rather announce the vote there. Thank you.
I can do that.
Ms. Boswell, I see that 2 hands are raised. If you would either it be Ms. Cade or Mr. Wickard, if you would tell us whose mic you want us to unmute first, we'll be able to take care of that.
Okay, I see Lainey first, so could you unmute her?
Am I reading?
We saw your hand raised, so we thought you had a question.
Oh, I do not.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. Mr. Wicker, did you have a question or comment that you needed to say? No? Okay. I think we're good to go.
And if you would be so kind, if you would look to item B that should be on your screen now and read that into the record.
Yes, item B is consideration and possible action approval of an irregular shaped lot to allow approval of a development plat, VARP 20-0008. And this is a request of Donna Eckels of Pro-Surv, the applicant, on behalf of Linda Parnel, owner, for for approval of a variance permitted in section 2.6.1.1B1 of the Unified Developmental Code number 2000-P to allow approval of the creation of an irregularly shaped lot described to wit. And this subdivision contains 2.1963 acres of land, and being a part of both Brazoria and Galveston Friendswood subdivision 108 and 107 lots, West Counties, Texas. Can we get the staff report concerning this?
Okay, well, it appears that Vince is having mic issues. As discussed, this is a request from a regularly shaped lot. It would combine two parcels into one. Staff recommends approval of the requested variance as it meets the criteria for approval. This is the aerial map showing the general location of the map, or general location of the site. And then this is the survey of the property. And that completes the staff report.
Martin, I had a question just for the new guy on the board here. Have we ever considered including like maybe the Google Map coordinates or GPS coordinates for these to be able to pull up other than what's provided within the package?
We haven't necessarily, but that's something that we can look into in future meetings to try and make it as easy as possible.
Only reason I would ask is that sometimes, so far, a few of these I've looked at, I've struggled to find where it is oriented, you know, through Google Maps or Google Earth, trying to figure out what it's in relation to, what roads are crisscrossed. Later in the package, we have a couple that are kind of out sort of kind of in the middle of nowhere, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, it took me a little while to figure out where they were, and I'm just thinking if there was a link on the site where I could just click it and it would take me right to it, then I can blow it up and be able to orient myself a little quicker. Just a thought, not a requirement. I would certainly just thinking of faster ways to get something done.
Always looking for better ways to make a presentation.
We asking for the XY coordinates on the plats. But this is under review and this is not the final plat. That's why you do not see the coordinate yet.
Okay, Harvey's, your hand is still raised. Lawrence, you have the floor.
GPS coordinates. The inherent difficulty is the properties, more often than not, on this commission have not been platted yet. As they've not been platted yet, we don't have an address yet. Without the address, sometimes Google Maps is kind of difficult to locate things without it. We could look for other ways, a hot link maybe or something like that to get that to you. I was just going to suggest that because you need the variance approved before you can get the plat approved, before you can get the address given by the addressing coordinator, sometimes it gets a little bit difficult in there. But your point is well received, and we'll see if we can, you know, it took me forever to figure out the general map location guide that's on the plat, and it's so small, it's kind of hard for me to see. So I can understand.
I know in EDC we use the Matt Buchanan always uses the GIS system. I think it's on the city's website, and then it kind of gives a real quick.
Yeah.
But you got to kind of know where you're going to begin with. So I didn't know if that was something we could work on. Thank you. This is Commissioner Brandon again. I don't have any questions regarding this piece of property being rezoned.
This is Commissioner Fuertes. May I make a motion to approve?
Second.
So we have a motion to approve, and can everyone that is voting for it, they can raise their hand? And I can see 6 votes, and that's approved unanimously.
Okay, item C, consideration and possible action, approval of a variance to allow creation of lots that do not have frontage on a public street. VARP 20-0009. This is a request by Kathy Fontenot of Survey 1, the applicant on behalf of Esquilia and Maria Alicia Salinas, owners, for approval of a variance permitted in section 2.6.1.1B1 of the Unified Development Code, ordinance number 2000-T, to allow approval of the platting of lots that do not have frontage on public street per section 3.2.14.2J within the city of Pearland zone G/O. And this is 52,482 acres square of subdivision A, 1.2048 in feet. And is further description needed? This is also a partial replat of lot 26 of the Allison Ritchie Gulf Coast Home Company, part of Suburban Gardens, Section 7, as recorded in Volume 2. Can we have the staff report concerning this?
Ms. Boswell, I was just going to suggest that if you see a general location, typically instead of reading the legal description, you can bypass to the general location if there's one present, and that meets the legal sufficiency for the readings as part of the agenda.
Oh, great. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Dansby. I just had a question on the legal description. It was just read. We've got the agenda item is 52,482 acres square of subdivision. And then on the staff report, we've got 1.2048 acres of 52,482 square feet.
This is Vince. You said city staff, the smaller amount is the correct amount, the amount that is in the staff report.
I assume that to be the case. Yes, sir. Thank you. That was a lot of acreage.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
This property is located in the Garden O'Day mixed-use zoning district. The intention is to plat 2 existing parcels. These 2 parcels are accessed by an existing 40-foot wide access easement. Both these parcels and the access easement had been created well before the properties were annexed into city limits. It's not a situation that we would approve of today. However, in order for the applicants to be able to get building permits in the future, they'll need to get this variance in order to be able to get the property platted, so they would be able to get building permits for the UDC. Staff does recommend approval of this variance because it does meet the criteria for approval for a variance. The location slide does show that the properties are located slightly west of O'Day Road. And as you can see, there are other properties that use this access easement. And the final slide shows the configuration of the two lots that would be platted. All this variance would do would allow the approval of lots to be platted that do not have direct access to public right-of-way. That concludes my presentation.
And if I recall correctly, I believe Ms. Fontenot may have sent something in, and I believe she's down as an attendee. But just for a point of clarification, I believe it's important to note that although this property does not have direct access to a public right-of-way, there is a recorded private easement, 20 feet of which goes, 20 feet width of which goes along this property, and then 20 feet is above that for the properties that go along there that take access to it. So there is a recorded private easement for all of these properties there. And if I'm misstating that, Ms. Fontenot is the representing the applicant, and the survey company may have additional information to provide.
What you had said was correct. It's an overall width of 40 feet for all of those pieces of property that are accessing that access easement.
And for a point of clarification, the city is okay with 20 feet of easement on another property, correct? As long as it's a recorded easement and it's total 40 feet, I believe it's over 26 feet. Is okay, fantastic.
This is Commissioner Dansby. I don't have any questions about this request.
Since I haven't seen any hands raised, I will look for a motion in a second.
I honestly don't know that we opened it or we have a motion to approve.
We never took a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
And then I'll in kind, I'll make a motion to approve on a vote.
Ms. Boswell, if we can unmute your mic, what we'd be looking for is for you to ask everybody to vote on the issue. Thank you.
Okay. Well, in moving forward, because the last time Muhammad did it, do I need to do it or is he going to do it? In terms of the votes.
So Muhammad is tallying just because he can keep his participant screen up.
Okay.
So
all of those in favor.
Chair, yeah. Thank you.
Could you please raise your hand at this time? Okay, those that are in favor, can you please unraise your hand? All of those not in favor, please raise your hand at this time if that is your option.
And I actually did see 6 votes for this item number C, and it's voted approved unanimously.
Okay, thanks. Okay, our next item is letter D, consideration and possible action, final plat of Savannah County Road 58, Phase B, Augusta Manor Drive to Hawthorne Village Drive, plat 20-00043. This is a request of Arbum Demise of LJA Engineering, the applicant, on behalf of Savannah Development LTD, owner, for approval of the final plat of Savannah Road and dedicating right-of-way of distance of about 1,150.43 feet on one reserve. And this is located along Brazoria County Road 58. And the general location is Brazoria County Road 58, Post Road from Augusta Manor Drive to Hawthorne Village Drive at the Brazoria/Fort Benning County line. Can we have the staff report concerning this time?
This is Vince Husted, city staff. This plan is interesting in that it does not create lots like most plats do. This is just merely a dedication of public right-of-ways that will help facilitate development in the Lakes of Savannah development area. It's located in the city of Fairland, ETJ. And basically it's just the dedication of right-of-way, and that concludes my staff report. There is a slide that does show the location of the applicant's property and the configuration of the plat, and it does meet all the requirements of the UDC and the code conformance table.
Will you go back to the slide right before this one, please? We need to move to approve this.
Yes, was there any discussion before that was needed? Commissioners, any comments or questions for staff? Okay.
I move we approve the final plat of the Savannah County Road 58 Phase V Augusta Manor Drive to Hawthorne Village Drive, plat 20-00043.
Commissioner Fuertes, I second.
Okay. All of those in favor of approval, could you raise your hand at this time? Okay, all of those that have current raised hands, could you unraise them? All of those not in favor, could you raise your hand at this time? Mohammed, were you able to get those votes?
Yes, ma'am. It was approved unanimously. 6 voted for it, 0 in opposition.
Okay, thank you. Next item of business, letter E, consideration and possible action, final plat of Stewart Heights at Savannah, section 16, plat 20-00044, Arbum Demise. And can we check on the spelling? Because I noticed that it's spelled, the Demise is spelled different than it was on the last item. Of LGA Engineering, the applicant, on behalf of Savannah Development LTD, owner, for approval of the final plat of Stewart Heights at Savannah, section 16, creating 82 single-family lots and 2 reserves on 1.384 acres of land located on the north side of Post Road, west of Brazoria, Fort Benning County line. The general location for this is the north side of Post Road, west of the Brazoria, Fort Benning County line. Can we have the staff report concerning this at this time?
Yes, this is Vince Husted, city staff. The property is located in the city of Pearland, ETJ, in the Lakes of Savannah development. The general location is north Post Road, west of the Brazoria-Fort Bend County line. This plat does meet all the requirements found in the UDC for approval of a final plat. And it also does meet the criteria of approval found in the code conformance table. The location slide shows that the applicant's property is located out in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. The final slide shows the configuration of the lot that will be located in the plat. That concludes my presentation.
This is Commissioner Dansby. I had a question. Obviously, it appears that the lots are going to be more narrow than typically presented in the past, I guess, 50-foot versus the 60-foot minimum lot depth. Is there, I mean, anything to be noted on that, or is that okay, I guess, for lack of a better term?
There is a section in the staff report that does mention that the even though the lots are more narrow, they are slightly deeper than what would be allowed in the R3 single-family zoning district. So they have comparable square footage to lots that would be located in the city. It's just that in this case, they're deeper and more narrow.
And city's okay with that?
Mr. Dansby, if I could expand further on what Vince was saying, the city of Pearland has a development agreement with this developer. Because this parcel, or rather all of this development is outside of the city limit, we're not able to actually zone with traditional zoning, and our zoning would normally set the lot sizes. However, as part of the development agreement, they have agreed to comply with certain things that would be similar to zoning. And in this case, this proposal, if I understand Vince correctly, fits the terms of that development agreement in the R3 zoning category. The 50-foot lot with its depth gets the area that's needed for the R3. Vince, if I've misunderstood that, please let us know.
Yes, sir, Lawrence, that is correct.
Commissioners, are there any additional questions or comments? Okay, see any raised hands?
I'll make a motion to approve. This is Commissioner Fuertes.
I'll second. This is Commissioner Dansby.
Thank you both. All of those in favor to approve, could you please raise your hand at this time? Could you please unraise your hand? All of those that are not in favor, could you please raise your hand at this time? Mohammed, were you able to calculate our votes?
Yes, Mrs. Chairman, and I do have 6 commissioners voting yes for this project and 0 against. It's approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Now we're at old business. Letter A, consideration and possible action. A request by Manzoor Memon, applicant on behalf of Esther Ando, owner, for approval of a zone change request from single family residential 1 R1 district to general commercial GC district on approximately 4.60 acres of land to wit. And the general location for this land is 3302 Dixie Farm Road, Pearland, Texas. Is there a staff report concerning this?
So this was brought forward at the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It was tabled at that time to allow the applicant to come forward and have any questions that needed to be answered done at that time. So we can either run through the staff report again to refamiliarize the commission, or we can go directly to allowing applicant to speak with the commission.
I'm ready to hear the applicant. I don't know about the other commissioners.
I did not get this one.
I'm certainly fine with the applicant moving forward as long as the city can respond afterwards.
I'd like to hear the applicant speak.
And if we can unmute, Mr. Manzoor, you have the floor.
Am I on it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I really appreciate all the board members that in these circumstances, you're still holding the meetings and serving the community. I compliment you on that. Coming back to the project, this is a very odd land, which is if you look into the drawing, it is a long land and it is behind Walmart, which is a commercial track. We are trying to see if we could get this land to be properly used and bring some tax roll. Right now, this property is bringing only $250,000 of the tax roll, and with improved shopping center with a animal clinic, it will bring about $2.5 million in tax roll, and it will also bring about 50 new jobs also. And this land cannot be used for residential because it is a very odd piece of land, and it will also create extra flood control with extra detention pond in the back of it. So it will help the surrounding areas also as far as the flood control is concerned too. So coming back, we have some questions brought in from the people who are living across the street, which I don't think have any significant impact on this land because Dixie Farm Road is a 4-lane road, and we do have a median cut very close to that property where the traffic can be properly guided. So there is no objection raised from the next door property owner, as well as 3-4 more residential tracks on the side of the road. So that we would request you to approve this to make it a general commercial. And I'll be happy to answer any questions from any board member. Maybe it can help to make things going easy. So I'm available for any questions.
I have a question. I know that your proposal was for the animal hospital and shelter. Do you have previous experience with that type of business?
My client has a clinic, the same type of clinic in Highlands, and he has been running it for last In fact, let me ask him, Dr. Samad, how long you have been in the business? 6 years. 6 years. Yeah, he has 6 years of business. He is a doctor himself, and he has one clinic. He lives close to Fairland, and he thinks that there is the need of this clinic in this area. So I'm just a contractor. I'm a builder. I will be building it for him, but he is himself a doctor who will occupy this building.
Understood. And I was asking because you said the revenue would be about 2.5 million along with 50 jobs. And there are several facilities like that within the vicinity of you. So I wanted to know if you had any familiarity with that as to how you came up with the numbers and what you thought the jobs could be provided for that business for this lot.
Yes, sir. And not only for that, because there will be some more retail spaces. So that will also bring about, this is a rough calculation, that it will bring about 50 jobs altogether.
Okay, thank you.
This is Commissioner Dans. We had a question to staff probably for clarification. So the request is to rezone this to general commercial GC. Another option would be go a different route, maybe neighborhood services or GB general business. I'm a little concerned about the open or lack of, I guess, restrictions if we went GC, but there are some limitations. I think neighborhood services limits maybe outdoor kennels, that kind of thing. GB would allow a little more flexibility, but my question would be, would neighborhood services and or GB, would a CUP be required to move forward with the project similar to this?
Correct. So the animal hospital is what's requiring such high zoning classification. You only get GC, or you only get animal hospital by right with the GC designation. If you lower that down to general business, then they have to come back to a joint special meeting to have a conditional use permit approved. And if you take that down to neighborhood services, then the animal hospital portion of the development is no longer available, but they would be able to operate a veterinary clinic. The difference between a veterinary clinic and an animal hospital is the level of surgeries. So basically a clinic is only for diagnosing an animal's condition, whereas a hospital allows for full medical procedures.
So this request would be for a full veterinary hospital, is that correct?
That was what was identified on the site plan, but Mr. Memon, if you would like to speak to that.
Yeah, yes, sir. It will be a full hospital with surgery and all those procedures, because it will be not economical viable to just do a animal clinic, but with hospitals, this will be a viable project.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
This is Commissioner Earls. So this zoning designation is the only one allowed for this business model. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's the only designation that allows in the animal hospital by right. If you were to go to general business, then the animal hospital portion of the development would need to be approved by a conditional use permit at a separate joint special meeting.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Fuertes. I had one question just on the dimensions of the staff, of the site by staff. The width of this site.
Is the question from me or?
It's to staff. Thank you.
The frontage is 215 approximately.
215. So since the site is angled, and I don't know if we can pull up the site map of the rendition that they're proposing or that was in the packet. So a 215-foot site means with an 80-foot depth building and setbacks and such, you're 100 feet from that, from the other, and probably less according to this drawing, to the neighboring property. I realize that I guess for me, that's not conducive for changing a zoning from general commercial or from residential to general commercial with a neighbor that's also residential. The buildings again face the neighbor. There is no buffer then between general commercial and that neighbor. And I realize currently there's no buffer between the residential, this particular tract, and the Walmart, but you're looking at the Walmart, the back end of it, rather than having cars come, you know, in and out of your site or your neighbor's site next to you. I'm not comfortable with the general commercial. So, and I, you know, having done commercial real estate for a while, my fear is the site, the success of a site behind another big box. Sometimes those don't fare very well from a retail standpoint. But that particular point is not my business as much as it is to me the lack of buffering and the change of intensity of this zone compared to residential. I'd like to think I'm pro-business, but I just don't think this one makes as much sense as in other locations. I'd be willing to consider neighborhood services, but I understand that changes everything for the applicant's wishes. But I just can't see myself going general commercial. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Fuentes, we have created a buffer. If you look into the drawing, they are showing it. We are planning to have a long fence and with a buffer. So there has been buffer been created there on the site plan. So
that's what I was trying to put on the screen and zoom in for you. It appears that there's a 25-foot landscape strip that they are providing from the property line to the first row of parking spaces there, which is the minimum with a planted landscape strip and a 6-foot masonry wall.
Correct. And all of those are requirements by the city. They're not, it's nothing extra. They're not doing anything, throwing anything else out there. That's what's required, correct?
Correct. That is the minimum landscape buffer when you are adjacent to a residential tract or property.
This is Commissioner Dansby. I'd have a problem with approving this as GC just because the open-ended availability of some other, I guess, business being able to come in if this was to not, once it's rezoned to GC, and it can be pretty much anything going forward from this point forward. So, you know, I would be open to discussing another zoning, maybe GB or neighborhood services, but if it remains GC, it would not be something I would be favorable to.
This is Commissioner Cade. I'm opposed to this for reasons, all the reasons already said, but also I know that the applicant mentioned that this is a need, but it really, there's an animal hospital about a quarter mile away and an animal clinic within sight distance of this actually about 200 yards away. So I'm not sure that the need is really that great. I also, the traffic, it is terrible right there. Getting out on Dixie Farm Road and turning is difficult. And you mentioned that there was a cut through or something right there where your site is, but it's very difficult for the neighbors that came out against this last meeting. And I think we have some letters against it from that homeowners association for that neighborhood right there, Willow Lakes. They already have a hard time getting in and out of their neighborhood, and this would just make it worse. And the buffering between the business and the neighborhood is not sufficient. So I would be against this.
This is Commissioner Boswell, and that's why I asked about the business and your background with it. I do agree with the other commissioners. I don't know that I agree that this should be zone GC, but I would be open to making this zone general business. And that way you would be able to still have the clinic aspect, but you wouldn't be able to do, the level of surgeries would be the difference. And to me, that, might be the middle ground that could be reached if other commissioners were in favor of that. But I do echo the sentiments that once it's rezoned to GC, there are other businesses that will be available to be there, and traffic seems to already be an issue with the little traffic that there is for that area. So I'll open any other discussion, but I would want to know feedback concerning how do other commissioners feel about this being a GB, if not a GC.
I do also want to say, this is Commissioner Kate again, it's not a little bit of traffic there because there's the Walmart, right across from that is Home Depot, and then it's Dixie Farm Road, which is a 4-lane street. It is a lot of traffic. It's a traffic issue right there, turning in and out of those cut throughs. Thank you.
This Commissioner Wicker, I do have a couple of comments if y'all hear me. I don't think I can go with the GC, but I can't see that property is ever going to be used for residential purposes, and I don't know what we're going to be able to do with the traffic on Dixie Farm Road. It is what it is, and it's going to be what it is as time goes on. I would, I think that there's a definite need for some sort of buffering in there between the residential and in the back of Walmart. That's their automotive, and the cars go through there all the time. So I'm sure there's noise associated with that. They repair cars, tires, and what have you in that facility, and they do exit along the back part of the property. But I would be against the GC as a general rule.
Does anyone know, it looks like there's an Equistar pipeline easement on the backside of Walmart. Does that seem to be the pipeline operations? Looking at it on my phone, so I couldn't remember the company that had it. It's adjacent to this. So my thought on it is very similar. I don't believe that the future of this property is anything probably but light commercial, because I wouldn't want to build a house behind the backside of Walmart either. So it's either going to be dead property with very limited taxes, very limited income, or light commercial. My understanding is that a CUP would allow another layer of control if the tenant or owner and the contractor met certain requirements. Then this would allow an extra layer of if you want more buffer, the CUP, they could add more buffer. it's that square right at the bottom there. I believe some kind of a Equistar pipeline of some kind. So, yes, right outside the blue line. So anyways, I think that the only chance that this would ever be anything would be like commercial, if we're not comfortable with this being what it is, but I would never build a house there. I'm not sure if anyone else would either.
South Texas pipeline.
The pipeline is a dead pipeline, sir. I have talked to the pipeline people. This is a dead line. It's running through the Walmart also, and it's a dead line.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I'd be more than happy if the applicant would come back with a CUP request and a zoning of GB. And in that request, I would hope that they would take a look at the table of uses in the GB and weed out those uses that might be offensive to a neighbor that close. I'd be much more in favor at that point.
But let me ask the owner, he's on the line also. Dr. Samad, do you think that will work for you?
No,
it will not work. Yeah. So it will be not economically viable. You know, this land will be sitting there, and the city is going to lose a lot of tax roll on that. So he's ready to invest about $2.5 million on that thing. So, but it will not.
It's okay. If it's not viable, we can work on it.
Does anyone else have any other questions? I'm not comfortable as presented, so.
Just as a matter of procedure, if I can interrupt before we go further, I did want to say that one person did register to speak for this item, Michael Wilcox. He said that he was going to speak on behalf of the Willow Lake HOA, which would be the neighborhood to the northeast kind of this. However, I don't see Michael Wilcox on the line as an attendee. If I'm missing that, please somebody correct me. But that person did register to speak, and if they are here, I would like to make sure that they had an opportunity to speak. And I would ask city staff if there's somebody here that I'm missing. And I'm getting a message from our IT person that nobody else had contacted us to speak. So even though Mr. Wilcox did register to speak, he did not attend this meeting, or he didn't enter in on this meeting. So that being said, I believe that there are some options. When we have a motion in a second, there are some options that are available to you. You can vote for the project as is with a GC zoning, which I'm hearing the majority of folks. In fact, I've not heard anybody support the GC zoning. So you could just vote it down altogether, which means you would have a negative recommendation to City Council. Then City Council, if it wanted to go forward with GC, would have to have a super majority vote to have this happen. A second option that you have, if somebody was so inclined, is to downgrade the zoning with your recommendation, and you can downgrade to the GB, which would allow the CUP option that was discussed, and that would be your recommendation. Or you could downgrade to the neighborhood service, which would be a less intense buffer between the residential property to the south and this one. So you can downgrade zoning, you just can't upgrade zoning with your recommendations. Of course, whatever you vote on tonight can help dictate what City Council's action is, because if they want to do something more intense than what you recommend, it will take a super majority of City Council to do that. If there are any questions about the procedure, please let me know. Otherwise, I will mute my mic and let it looks like Ms. Boswell has her hand up.
This is Commissioner Kay. Lawrence, since the applicant owner is not even interested in downgrading or in another alternative, shouldn't we just take that into consideration also?
Yes, ma'am. That is something you can always take into account the applicant's preference as you do your vote. And as the applicant has said, a GB and a neighborhood services vote would not make it economically viable. And it might be fair to them to just vote the project down so that they don't waste any additional time or money in trying to prepare well, they'd still have to go to city council for this particular item because it's still live, but they might not want to utilize any of their resources based on what your vote is to try to change the downgraded vote with the CUP project because it would only allow the clinic and not the hospital, which, as the applicant has said, is not economically viable for the owner.
Can we make a motion to vote, or Ms. Boswell?
We can make a motion to vote.
This is Commissioner Dansby. I make a motion to not approve the project at 3302 Dixie Farm Road as presented for GC.
Do I have a
If I could
second?
interrupt real quickly before we do anything further, Mr. Dansby, I know you phrased it in the negative, but when you phrase your vote in the negative, it gets very confusing.
I understand.
Say, vote it for phrase the motion in the positive, and then when nobody votes for it, we call for all those opposed, we would count the opposed, and then that makes the recommendation easier to count and to go forward to city council.
Understood. I'd like to amend the motion for this project on 3302 Dixie Farm as presented.
Second that, Ron Wicker.
Okay, at this time, all those in favor of the project, could you please raise your hand at this time? All those that have raised their hands, please unraise your hand at this time if you were in favor. All those that are opposed to the project, please raise your hand at this time. Mohammed, were you able to get those votes?
Correct. So I had 6 commissioners voting against it and 0 for it. So
thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
And just while you're still on the line, this will go to the May 18th council meeting for first hearing, and then a second on June 8th.
Okay. Does this conclude the hearing?
Yes, sir. That concludes the hearing for that issue. We still have one last discussion or last item on our agenda, but it is not associated with this zone change.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will be getting off the line. Thank you.
So now we're going to move to discussion items and the commissioner's activity report. Does anyone have that? Outside of that, the next planning and zoning regular meeting is May 11th, 2020.
Is that correct? That's next week?
Isn't that joint session?
For the joint,
Should be the third Wednesday of the month.
May 18th, 2020.
Typically, we have 2 meetings each month, and the joint special meeting or the joint public hearing was scheduled for May 11th to avoid conflict with
Memorial Day.
yes, Memorial Day.
Gotcha. Okay, if there's nothing else, meeting adjourned, 8:15 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.